Starting today, Mom will be living with us. She's your parent too, so make sure you take good care of her. Out of the blue, my husband Colin announced that his mother, Wendy, would be moving in with us to live together. On top of that, he decided to use my room for Wendy and threw my belongings in the hallway. Where am I supposed to sleep if I don't have a room? In the hallway, obviously. Turning around slowly, my husband, meeting my gaze, laughed as if it was the most natural thing to say. My name is Kaylee, a 38-year-old housewife. I lost my parents suddenly in a car accident 5 years ago. Without any siblings or relatives, I was destined to be alone for life. Haunted by loneliness, I desperately sought the connection of a family and signed up for every matchmaking website. That's where I met Colin, my current husband. He was hardworking, confident, leading the way, reliable, and, above all, incredibly kind, which drew me to him. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and we got married 3 months ago, now living together in the same house. I had always worked as a nurse, but after working as hard as Colin, I fell ill with a high fever. The diagnosis suggested it was due to overworking. When I told Colin about it, I've been worried that Kaylee has been working too much recently. Your health comes first. Can you leave work to me and just wait for me at home? He cared for my health with such kind words. Though I hesitated to quit my job as a nurse, knowing I could always return thanks to my qualifications, I accepted Colin's suggestion and became a housewife. However, since then, the dynamic between Colin and me began to change gradually. Colin, concerned about me, started limiting what I could do, which escalated over time. Eventually, he began to dictate everything I did. Feeling guilty that Colin was now working alone to support the household, I soon found myself believing I must absolutely obey him. One day, about half a year into this lifestyle, I returned home from grocery shopping to find Wendy, my mother-in-law, at our house. Thinking she was just visiting, I greeted her and went to put away the groceries, only to find all my belongings thrown out in the hallway. Confused, standing in the hallway, Colin came to explain. Wendy and Colin's father divorced when he was young, and Colin was raised solely by Wendy. Since then, they hadn't seen Colin's father, and Colin, having been brought up only by his mother, cherished her deeply. He had proposed living together with Wendy a while ago and had been preparing for it. Shocked that such a significant decision had been made without a word to me, Colin dropped another bombshell. Mom has always been struggling on her own. Now that she's getting older, I want to make her life as comfortable as possible. So, from tomorrow, please prepare meals for 3 and don't let Mom do any housework, okay? As if to add insult to injury, he stated that since there was no room for Wendy, my room would be used for her, and my belongings were in the way, so he threw them in the hallway. When I asked where I was supposed to sleep, Colin and Wendy just laughed, saying there was no room available and that I could sleep in the hallway. For a moment, I thought this was absurd and unfair, but my thoughts quickly faded, filled with the notion that living together to care for Wendy was noble, and I should do everything to support them fully, accepting Colin's terrible suggestion with, "Understood, I'll do my best from today." Easily accepted it. Moreover, I felt it was only natural to meet any request as best as I could, grateful for Colin and, by extension, Wendy, who raised him. Since living with Wendy, I've been criticized by both her and Colin for everything I do. The way you wash dishes is unacceptable. Are you that stupid? Today's meal is too salty overall. Are you trying to kill me and Mom? I was subjected to thoughtless verbal abuse and harassment. And physically and mentally exhausted, I eventually found myself sleeping in the hallway day after day. Without recognizing the absurdity of my situation, I would scold myself for not working hard enough whenever I felt tired and obediently went about my days. One winter day, Wendy commanded me to clean every corner of the house and prepare a luxurious dinner worthy of a high-end hotel, as she was bringing someone important over. I started early, polished the house, shopped for ingredients, and frantically looked up recipes to create a sumptuous meal. After finishing the cooking, I was told to stay out of sight in the hallway so as not to bother the guests, and I complied without question, making sure not to be seen by anyone. From the laughter leaking from the living room, I gathered the guest was Wendy's current boyfriend. As the evening wore on, it seemed the guest was going to stay the night. Wendy instructed me to wait in the kitchen. "Kaylee, it would shock Antonio to know you're sleeping in the hallway, and it's bad for appearances. Just sleep in the kitchen tonight, okay?" Where she later said. Since Colin's word was a law to me, I went to confirm with him, but he was visibly upset about something work-related. "Don't come to confirm every little thing. Don't show your face," and snapped. I had become accustomed to being hit, so I quickly left to avoid angering him further. Unable to confirm where I should sleep with Colin, I decided without much thought to sleep in the hallway as usual. In the early morning, I was awakened by a surprised man's voice and realized it was Antonio looking down at me. Though I hadn't seen his face the previous day, it must be Wendy's boyfriend, Antonio. "What are you doing here? Are you a member of this household?" Surprised, but asked, I honestly replied that I was the daughter-in-law and usually slept in the hallway. Seeing my attitude as if nothing were amiss, Antonio paused, then asked for my contact information. When I explained I didn't have a mobile phone because Colin managed it, Antonio suggested we meet at a nearby cafe once the sun was up. He wanted it to be a secret from Colin and Wendy, and though I hesitated, his earnest expression convinced me to agree. Later, Antonio left, seen off by Wendy and Colin. In the morning, claiming I was going out to buy groceries, I left for the cafe where Antonio was already waiting. We went inside together. After ordering drinks, "Actually, I've invited someone else today," Antonio said. Soon, a woman he knew arrived. "Hello, my name is Rebecca. I've known Antonio for a long time." Rebecca was a great listener, and we had an enjoyable time chatting about various topics. It had been so long since I had communicated with someone other than Colin and Wendy that I realized how much I had forgotten the joy of conversation. As we were leaving, Rebecca asked about my life, and after sharing my story, she invited me for tea again the next day, to which I gladly agreed. For several mornings, meeting Rebecca at the cafe became a routine, discussing trivial matters and enjoying casual conversations. As I talked more with Rebecca at the cafe, I began to feel a sense of discomfort about my life, and tears would suddenly come during our talks, leading me into a strange state of mind. My initial instinct to consult Colin whenever I felt uneasy shifted towards thinking about how to leave him, and that's when I finally realized the injustice of my situation. Rebecca, seeing this, smiled kindly and gently wiped my tears with a handkerchief. It turned out Rebecca worked in psychiatry, and Antonio, noticing something was off with me, had asked her to listen to my story. They avoided directly telling me that Colin and Wendy were the issue, fearing I wouldn't listen, and instead took their time over tea to help me come to my own realizations gradually. At first, I thought I was just doing my job by listening, but now it's different. As a friend, I want to save Kaylee. If Kaylee wants to be saved, we're here to reach out, always by your side. Hearing these kind words made me break down in tears. Rebecca gently stroked my back as I cried endlessly, just staying by my side. When I finally stopped crying, it was time to part ways with Rebecca and head home. Even at our farewell, "We're always on your side," she said. Walking home, the fog that had clouded my thoughts cleared, leaving me feeling refreshed and clear-headed. That night, when Colin started complaining about my cooking as usual for the first time, "If it's too bland, just add whatever seasoning you like," I retorted. Colin, surprised at being talked back to, quickly turned red. "How dare you speak to your husband like that?" and furiously said. Wendy, who was present, also started to get angry, and amidst their sinister laughter, "A woman who talks like that deserves a divorce. Get out of this house now," they yelled. Thinking they were doing me a favor by kicking me out, I silently nodded, ready to leave. As I packed, Colin kept ordering me around, saying to prepare for a shower if I regretted it, or to make a tastier meal next time. To all that, as usual. "It's because I'm an inadequate dill," I replied. Gathering my few belongings, Colin, displeased that things didn't go his way, let out a heavy sigh and grabbed a beer from the kitchen to drink on his own. Ignoring him, I put on my coat at the entrance when Wendy, following me, sighed dramatically. "If you're that remorseful, I might forgive you. Now, go wash the dishes." "No, Colin told me to leave, so I will." Wendy, remembering I only listened to Colin's orders, went to fetch him, who was drinking. Ignoring them, I left the house, got into the waiting taxi, and quickly saw the house fade into the distance. In the taxi, I wondered why I ever listened to them, realizing I might have been unconsciously clinging to the idea of family. Determined to regain my freedom, I resolved to pursue a divorce, having endured their unreasonable demands and verbal abuse. I prepared for a compensation claim in the divorce proceedings, sending the divorce papers and invoice together. Ignoring all calls and texts from Colin and Wendy, I blocked them. When Colin, unable to contact me and faced with the divorce papers and invoice, became furious, I received a notice from the court about his lawsuit against me. I was momentarily shaken, but I was convinced that those people could do it, so I prepared for the trial. I studied myself for the trial, following Rebecca's advice to use recorded evidence of Colin's verbal abuse and photos of injuries from his assaults. The evidence favored me, leading to a successful divorce and Colin being ordered to pay over $100K in compensation. I finally won back a dignified life and peace. Rebecca later told me my situation with Colin and Wendy had been quite apparent to the neighbors, who speculated about the abuse and persecution I faced. My departure confirmed their suspicions, and the community viewed them as a violent family. Wendy and Antonio broke up soon after. During my stay, Antonio had refrained from leaving Wendy, fearing it might harm me. However, Wendy's refusal to break up, clinging to Antonio. "I can't be with someone who doesn't value their son's wife or family, someone who can't appreciate the people closest to them," led him to decisively end it, saying, "With me gone, Colin and Wendy, neither adept at housework, argued daily over chores. Colin, who used to vent his work and daily stress on me, turned to alcohol for relief, as he no longer had me to take it out on. During our divorce proceedings, his drinking escalated, and when drunk, his violence worsened, even towards Wendy. He then caused trouble at work while hungover, leading to disciplinary action. Now, he's doing hard physical labor to make ends meet. Fortunately, I received the compensation from our divorce in one lump sum, so it didn't affect me. After everything, I gave gifts of gratitude to Rebecca and Antonio, who had helped me, and then moved far away to start a new life. Though distance has grown between Rebecca and me, we continued to deepen our friendship through chats at cafes and traveling together. This ordeal was the worst of times, failing to secure familial bonds, but instead, I gained the best of friendships. I've returned to nursing, finding even more fulfillment in my work. And I'm trying new things like marathon running and swimming, enjoying my days free from anyone's control. You just have to put up with it if you're feeling sick. My husband Raymond insisted on making love while I was suffering from morning sickness. Seeing me refuse because of nausea, Raymond looked utterly inconvenienced and pushed forward aggressively. When I asked at least for the use of contraception, Raymond sighed in exasperation and said, "Why would we need that if you're already pregnant? As a wife, stop making excuses and fulfill your duty." My name is Haley, a 27-year-old employee at a foreign trading company. I married Raymond, who works at the same company, a year ago. Raymond is 1 year my senior at 28, with a handsome and refreshing look that makes him popular among the female staff. He is also the ace of the sales department, earning the trust of his superiors through consistent performance. Furthermore, despite his capabilities, he never boasts, always maintains a humble attitude, and is willing to lend an ear to juniors for work advice, making his personality seemingly perfect. I was one of those who admired the perfect Raymond, but the opportunity to date him came surprisingly from him. After finishing a project I had been struggling with due to consecutive overtimes, Raymond approached me, inviting me out to dinner as a gesture of consolation. Surprised but thrilled by the sudden invitation from the senior I admired, I accepted and went to his favorite restaurant. With his being the ace of the sales department, Raymond had interesting stories to share and was a great listener, making for an enjoyable and meaningful time. Gradually, we began dining out regularly on Raymond's invitation, and before I knew it, the relationship I thought was out of my reach had begun. The progression from there was swift. We went on various dates, and Raymond became a source of support for me, both professionally and personally. On our first anniversary of dating, back at the restaurant where we first dined, "I can't imagine a life without Haley. I want to make you happy forever. Will you marry me?" Raymond proposed with a bouquet of 100 roses. "I'm so happy. Yes, I will." Of course, my answer was an immediate yes. We announced our marriage at work, and our colleagues were happy for us, saying we were a perfect match. Soon after, we had a lavish wedding ceremony. Our parents cried tears of joy seeing me in my wedding dress. I couldn't believe the movie-like scenario I was living in, marrying the man of my dreams, and felt overwhelmingly happy as if it were all a dream. One morning, feeling unwell with waves of nausea that wouldn't stop, I decided to leave work early. Thinking it might be possible, I used a pregnancy test, which confirmed I was pregnant. Raymond and I had been longing for a child, so I immediately messaged him the news. He replied with joy right away. I later heard from a colleague that Raymond had jumped for joy and cried at the news at work. With this pregnancy, I decided to resign from my job. Though I loved my work and felt it rewarding, I had planned to continue working as long as possible before taking parental leave, considering our future. However, Raymond was not pleased with this idea. "I'm worried about Haley and the baby. Since I make enough money, isn't it better for you to quit your job? Prioritize yourself and the baby over work now." He urged me to quit. Initially, I was hesitant about becoming a housewife, yet feeling somewhat anxious about my first pregnancy and reassured by Raymond's concern for me and our child, I happily accepted his suggestion and resigned. Leaving my job was met with regret from my colleagues, but I was determined to do my best, holding Raymond's words close to my heart. At that time, I thought having a husband who asked me to prioritize our child and myself because of his earnings was ideal and wonderful. But as soon as I quit my job, Raymond's selfish and self-centered true nature began to show. That day, suffering from severe morning sickness, making even cooking difficult, I bought ready-made meals from the supermarket. When Raymond came home and I served the microwaved frozen food for dinner, he clicked his tongue in clear dissatisfaction. "You're not saying this is all for dinner, right?" "Sorry, I've had severe morning sickness all day and couldn't cook, so I bought some frozen food from the supermarket." The moment I said that, Raymond slammed the table with his fist and threw the fork he was holding at me. Caught off guard and stunned, "You're supposed to be a housewife. Can't you even do something as simple as cooking? You're really useless." He berated me with an anger I had never heard before. "I'm sorry. Please don't be so angry." Shaken by a sight of Raymond I had never seen, I hurriedly picked up the fork and apologized, holding back tears. But Raymond, having soured in mood, locked himself in his room. Since then, Raymond would get angry and throw tantrums if I was not doing housework, or if he was not satisfied with the quality of it. Today, he got mad again for not having the laundry done before he got back and started kicking the furniture around. As usual, I apologized while crying, and then Raymond said something shocking. "You're really useless. You know, the only thing I like about you is your face. I married you because I could tolerate everything else for the sake of that face." Raymond boldly declared he only liked my face. "In the future, some high-earning man might come after you just for your looks. If you're a housewife, you don't have to worry about that, and without an income, you wouldn't easily file for divorce, right? Especially if we have kids. Can you raise a child unemployed? Hand over custody to me? Pay child support? Impossible, right?" His blatant reason for forcing me to quit my job left me speechless. Losing confidence in building a future with Raymond, divorce crossed my mind. However, frustrated as I was, thinking of the child I was carrying, I didn't have the courage to divorce him at that moment. Since I wasn't at fault, I wanted to make Raymond understand before filing for divorce. With this in mind, and enduring the nausea from morning sickness, I started planning my escape from Raymond. Then, one day, after a particularly severe bout of morning sickness where I could do nothing but vomit or lie down, I found myself lying on the living room sofa. I must have fallen asleep because before long, Raymond came home from work. Realizing I hadn't prepared dinner, I hurriedly got up. "Welcome back. I accidentally fell asleep, but I'll start on dinner right away." "It's okay today. I already ate with a client." "Oh, that's good then." Relieved that I hadn't upset him, I lay down again, still feeling unwell. After changing out of his suit, Raymond approached me lying on the sofa, kissed me, and demanded we make love. "Sorry, the morning sickness is really bad today, so I'm not in the mood. Maybe another time?" Gently refusing due to my morning sickness, Raymond instantly turned red with anger. "I'm making a move on you, and you're rejecting me," he yelled, trying to force the issue. Fearing his bad mood would have repercussions later, I submitted without resistance despite feeling nauseous, as Raymond attempted to proceed without contraception. When I finally insisted he use protection, he went to the bedroom visibly annoyed. Kicking things and causing a ruckus, he quickly returned to the living room. "We're out of stock. If we don't have any, can't help it, right?" As Raymond aggressively reached for my clothes, I desperately resisted, citing the baby's well-being, and he threw a bag at my face, clearly turned off. "A wife should at least keep contraceptives stocked. If you really want me to use one, go buy it yourself." Seeing my chance, I rushed out, sweating, and headed for the car. An hour later, hearing the front door, Raymond came to the entrance in a furious rage. "Where have you been wandering off to just to buy contraceptives? You're way too late, stupid woman," he shouted in his usual loud voice. But the moment he yelled, his face froze in shock and turned pale. There stood me and my dad. My dad is about 6 feet, 2.8 inches tall, with a large build and a background as a national wrestling athlete. Moreover, Raymond was intimidated by Dad's face, which looked stern and unfriendly. The reason Dad was here is that I had driven to my parents' house seeking help. Surprised by my sudden return, my parents welcomed me warmly. Feeling their warmth, I couldn't help but burst into tears. Realizing something serious had happened, they asked me what was wrong, and I told them everything. After hearing my story, my parents were upset I hadn't come to them sooner. Especially Dad, who was so angry he was shaking. He immediately decided we would go to my house to give Raymond a piece of his mind. Facing Raymond, Dad said, I've heard everything, Raymond. It seems you treated Haley terribly. I can't entrust my precious daughter and grandchild to someone like you. Divorce her right now." Dad's voice was as loud as Raymond's. "What's this all about? Coming to my house all of a sudden and demanding a divorce based on Haley's side of the story. Do you have any proof? Don't believe everything you hear. You just called my daughter a stupid woman, leaving her alone to buy contraceptives while she's suffering from morning sickness. What part of that is a lie?" Just as Raymond and my father were about to come to blows, I pulled out my mobile phone from my pocket. "If you want other evidence, here it is. Videos of you spewing insults and anger, lashing out at furniture, and pushing me around." I had installed a pet camera at home as part of gathering evidence of Raymond's misconduct. The camera had captured everything, and I had kept the recordings as evidence. The footage of Raymond's rampage played clearly on my mobile phone. Seeing the video, Raymond turned pale and tried to snatch the phone from me, but Dad quickly stepped in between us, glaring at Raymond to back off. "I don't want to be treated like a housekeeper and controlled by Raymond anymore. Choose either submitting this video to your company or divorcing me and paying the settlement in court." I let out all the emotions I had been holding back, demanding a divorce from Raymond. Reluctant at first, Raymond agreed, fearing the loss of his position at his company and unwilling to lose his job. Later, through discussions with lawyers, he signed the divorce papers, agreeing to the settlement and child support payments. With Dad's help, I packed my things and left the house. This allowed me to finally free myself from Raymond's control. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, my morning sickness had calmed down. However, being in the mid-stage of pregnancy, I couldn't work for long and had to move back to my parents' house due to the lack of income. My parents warmly welcomed me back and eagerly supported me, looking forward to the arrival of their grandchild. As promised, I didn't submit the evidence to the company and completely cut ties with Raymond, deleting his contact information but ensuring the child support payments were secured. As for Raymond, at a company drinking party where the topic of our divorce came up, perhaps because he was drunk, I didn't do anything wrong, right? He ended up revealing everything he had done to me. Thinking his actions were justified and expecting sympathy and support, he instead faced complete disdain from his colleagues, leading to his isolation. This incident, confirmed by our actual divorce, drastically changed his standing in the company to being seen as problematic in character. Despite being up for promotion and having high expectations from his boss, he was passed over. Trying to claim it was all a drunken joke later did not regain anyone's trust, making his situation uncomfortable, leading to his resignation within a year. The savings and severance pay Raymond had accumulated from his sales job were wiped out by the divorce settlement, and now, while job hunting, he's desperately working part-time jobs day and night. Exhausted, he's finding it difficult to land a new job. Here I am, living at my parents' home with my angelic child, who was safely brought into this world. Navigating the unfamiliar waters of parenting has been a challenge, with sleep often interrupted and hard to come by, but there have been joys too. Remarkably, I was able to return to my previous job. A colleague, having heard about my situation from Raymond, reached out and, after discussing my current circumstances, helped facilitate my return to work. Thanks to their assistance, I was able to return to the workplace I loved. Upon expressing my gratitude to my colleague, "Now that you're a single mother, you have to raise your child on your own. Let us provide support in any way we can." They offered some incredibly supportive words. These words were incredibly heartening. I felt overwhelmed with gratitude towards my colleagues. My parents have also been a tremendous help, looking after my child and supporting me in juggling both work and parenting. I've made a firm resolution never to be dominated by anyone again, to freely strive in both parenting and my career. And I vowed that I would live happily ever after with my beloved child.